about emotional intelligence, but again, as you see, the title says the intelligent way to virtual emotions, because I'm going to cut through this in a short amount of time. And to be completely transparent with you guys, I wanted to have about 140 slides and spend about 9 hours minimum with you guys in this, because I believe this is a very, very pivotal time in the mortgage industry. Not just on the concepts of, what are we going to do with, people that are below 700 credit scores to, our warehouse lines. All these kind of things are very important areas of our business, and it's actually a stress. But what's really happening emotionally is going to be the key to how we maintain under stress. And so, if some of you might know me, I've maybe worked with you in the past as a consultant or even as an employee of another company I've worked with, and you would know that my passion has always been how the mind works and how people operate. So we're going to talk about that, because now I'm seeing people operating in such a heightened state that it's almost like Hulk-like in the emotions. And I want you guys to really understand, as leaders, as employees, what's going on, and maybe give you some tips, because ironically, I've been working with a lot of industries outside the mortgage, and they're really adapting quickly to this new virtual emotional employee, if you will. We have a new way of looking at work. We have a new way of looking at how we operate as a team and as a company. And I hope you guys take some of these notes, and feel free to ask questions. This is interactive. I know it's kind of weird because you're probably accustomed to multitasking while things like this happen, but I hope you do pay attention, tie in some of the things I'm talking about within your own world, and see if we can answer that collectively as a group, okay? So as I say that, I know I only have a short amount of time, so I'm going to move quickly through this and give you guys something to think about. So I always start with something. I love history, and I look at the way the world has operated in the past, because it gives me an idea of how we're going to operate in the future. So if you guys know who Marcus Aurelius is, well, during the plague in Rome, they lost millions of people. And in his writings, he said, in a crisis that affects lots, to be connected is a key when it comes to coping, supporting each other, and finding solutions. So in all due respect, Marcus Aurelius knew emotional intelligence. He knew connecting with people emotionally was the number one thing to do under a crisis. And I'm sure all of you guys can admit that we're pretty much we're in a crisis right now. I mean, we can posture ourselves, we can talk, we can dress up, but we're in a crisis because it's the unknown. Whenever there's an unknown, it is a crisis. Now, it can be from adrenaline or cortisol, but it is an unknown. And that is the key. It's like when we face the truth that we're all under a shock level of concepts right now, we have to realize our body is going to respond a certain way, and our mind. And so I want you guys to kind of understand the stress levels in finding resources is usually reactive and not proactive or preactive, if you will. So I'm going to give you guys some ideas on how to do that. Now, we talked about in the subject line, the PTSD, how to recognize it. So I have to bring this up, because if I didn't, it would be rude of me to have that part of the title or the description and not give you some idea of PTSD. Now, I know you guys have heard of PTSD. We all know, what PTSD is. But, here's the thing. I'm going to give you a quick little summary of what's happening with PTSD. So it's kind of like a road rage mentality, but it's road rage under the concept of a police officer riding alongside you. So that maybe not all of you, maybe one of you have had road rage in the past. That road rage is expressed, and it's almost like you don't care who sees you, you justify why you acted out. But when there's a police officer running alongside you and you still have that road rage, you tend to maintain that frustration internally. You have it, but you're doing everything to show that you're not feeling it. Well, that's what PTSD is with our employees right now. I promise you, I've been working with, being a behavioral coach, a C-suite coach, a leadership coach, a mortgage coach, working with people. I pay attention to the nuances, not just the words, but I look at you. When I interview you, when I'm working with you, I am watching your behavior. I'm paying attention to the repetitive words you use. I'm paying attention to the words you don't use, the breathing, the way you turn your eyes. All these things dictate that frustration. And that frustration could be many things. It could be fear, it can be anxiety, it can be hopelessness, it could be all these things that are inside of you that become heightened. But what happens is what we're seeing right now is that, we use this word cortisol a lot because it's been the tagline of the world today about stress. And cortisol is just one of them, but it's a bunch of chemicals that help produce that stress. But the fact that cortisol is the number one word we've used under stress. There's, I've said it in the last presentation I had, stress alone weakens the immune system. Now we talk about this coronavirus, and he says people with weakened immune systems can, die from it. We hear about all the deaths. We hear about all the job losses. We hear about all these things which create the feeling of hopelessness, avoidance. It gives people depression. These are important things to remember, that your employees are handling it as if they have this PTSD, but they have a cop running alongside them. So they're literally trying to keep it together. But the thing about cortisol, it works similar to adrenaline. It is good for you because it's a survival chemical. It tells your body, your subconscious tells your body to perform, act, don't think about it, just move because you have to. Now, with that being the case, I want you guys to put this in perspective. How long can somebody sprint 100 yards? Maybe 200 yards. After they get 300 yards or 400 yards, what's going to happen to the body? It's going to start breaking down. You start using different muscles. All of a sudden, you might hurt your joints. Well, that's what's happening in our world today. We have a lot of what you call PTSD going on with your work, especially your employees right now that are working. Now, I want you to consider, what are they thinking about outside of your company? They're thinking about their family members who are elderly. They're thinking about their kids. They're thinking about maybe their kids are at home right now as they're working. They're thinking about that schools aren't going to go back to school and they're going to now bleed into the summer. They're thinking about maybe their job could be lost because of all the changes within our industry that's going to dictate if we need to, trim the fat, if you will. So there's all these things that are taking place, which creates that cortisol. So PTSD does this. And let me give you a couple of things about this PTSD thing. This is really important to understand because I'm going to tell you, you're going to recognize it pretty quickly when it comes to you and your employees. So the brain wants to keep us safe. It wants us to, it's going to look to protect itself on a continual basis. So it's looking for things that are comfortable and familiar. And that even means when you're stressed. So you might get accustomed to feeling stressed, but your mood changes and you can't keep that mood for long. But your mood changes and you start avoiding things. You start kind of looking out for how to avoid conversations or even deal with your customers. You just look for ways to avoid it. You might even start cleaning the house when you know you got to be somewhere because you really don't want to do it. So just keep that in mind. It makes you react to things a little differently. Now, I'm going to bring this up to you guys because the last call, and I've gotten some feedback on this, which I'm glad I did because I have a lot of leaders that are excited. They're excited with the fact that they have people working at home and production has increased. Have you guys felt that? I'm sure you have. Some of you might say, we've blown it out the water. Ever since people worked at home, it's gotten better. And this is true because it goes back to what I just said. The adrenaline is like running to chase a football when you're running, they say hiking, you take off, your adrenaline, your cortisol, all that is heightened. You're so much more aware and you perform better and stronger. But there's study after study, this is one I'm showing you on the screen, that shows you that it can't last. What happens is the body will shut down and you become numb to the experience where you really just say, I can't do this anymore. And instead of saying, how can I continue to do it? You're in a concept of throwing your hands up. So I'm warning, I'm like the negative Nick here, trying to warn people about the fact that you're going to have your employees probably doing well, but in the process of doing well, all the stresses on top of that, there's going to be a part where the body says, I need to shut down, I need to go to sleep. Now, this might just be your employees, but it also could be you. So, I have to give you guys a couple of things because the pendulum does swing in many directions, but as employees or as a leader, you're going to have this thing happen to you. And you got to think about the feeling of threat. How long can you keep it going? How long can the endorphins continue? So I'm going to ask you guys to look at this list here, and you might feel some of these things right now. And that's a sign, subconsciously, your body's telling you, I'm starting to weary. I'm starting to get tired of this sprint. So I want you guys to look at this, and you don't have to say anything, but it's something to keep in mind that if it's you can share in the box. I work with all kind of leaders and people that are frontline employees, and I pretty much can tell you that this is happening with a lot of people right now. So is this happening to any of you guys? Do any of you feel any of these right now? And you can use a chat box. Only I can see it if you want. Feel free to put it in there. That way I can reach out to you later, maybe give you some tips. But these things are what people are feeling. Now, the one thing that I would tell you that happens really quickly with PTSD, or the spiral going in the negative direction, is that you get rigid and stuck on how things should work. The last one, I want to bring this up because, Carl Jung, who studied human psychology, and he's pretty much a stamp on a lot of things that we have noticed to be true in our nature, is that when you're stressed or feeling fear, you cling on to things you feel you know more of. And so rigidity is a sign of stress. And I find it very interesting that, I have more companies and leaders that will reach out to me in forms of, like, when they are feeling good and say, what can you do to make it better? But when people are feeling bad, they bunker down into the things that seem to make sense. And they look for people mimicking what they're doing because it justifies that I must be doing it right because everybody else is doing it. So I want to challenge you guys to understand that this is a perfect time in our industry to break away and think outside the box, to know that the stress levels might be hunkering you down into areas that make you feel I'm producing, I'm doing well, because you're comfortable with the way things were. But we're being forced to do things differently. And change comes by decision or by, direction. You're going to be forced to do it, or you're going to decide to do it. And I want you guys to make a decision. How am I going to make things change in a way that I want to? So keep that in mind. Now, I can go through a whole list, and some of you guys have been through emotional intelligence training. You might even been through it with me. I can give you a list. There's a billion companies out there that are creating all kind of motivators, all kind of ways of emotional intelligence. And I'm gonna just tell you this. This is the first time I've ever said this. I've been involved in so many different programs designing emotional intelligence for companies and programs that are out there that you might even tap into and spend a lot of money for. But by human nature, we tend to make things a little more complicated so we can make it more valuable to you. That's truth. Emotional intelligence is just a name, but it's not something new. It's basically human nature being defined as intelligent. It is nothing new under the sun. Human nature, since the beginning of time, has been the exact same thing, regardless of technology, regardless of era, regardless of anything else. There's only a few things I can put in here that are going to make sense, but just so you know, they're really top three motivators, and they all bleed into other words that mean the exact same thing. So I just want you to understand, I'm going to say a few things here. You might disagree, but if we were to dig deep, you would see I'm saying the exact same thing in different words. So I hope you guys take that understanding. So let me just give you a couple of three things that really are the synapses of really emotional intelligence, the key figures here. So trust. Now, trust is past and current perceptions is based off of trust. So I'm going to base my trust from you based off of my past experiences. I'm going to look at you and judge you based off of what you look like, what you sound like, what you said you do, what you don't do, how you approach me. All those things that I feel from you are going to be certain in my mind as being truth because of my past experiences, period. All of my past experiences tie into how I feel about you. I am judging you all the time subconsciously. So keep this in perspective. What your employees are going through right now, what did we tell them? Not all of you, but some of us said, we can't have you work from home. We don't have the capacity to do that. Now, we did it in 24 hours, nationwide. There's a trust factor there. We're not going to get rid of anybody, and then somebody leaves or somebody's let go. There's a trust factor there. We're going to maintain the same, and then we don't. Trust factor there. There's going to be things like that happen throughout the rest of this duration of what we're going through. That's going to be a hard thing to keep unless you know how to be honest in the right way. The next thing is control. Now, in psychology, it's called locus of control. I want to feel like I am my own boss. The more we talk to our employees, the more we talk at them. The more we say things like, I need you to get this done for me, or why haven't you done this? You're making me feel like I have no control. You're putting me in a box, and it's the locus of control that I'm struggling with, and I don't have that autonomy. That's another issue that we've done in our business, and our customers do it to our processors or loan consultants. or we'll say things to them like I said, which means I told you already. Why are you asking me this question? That's the locus of control. I'm now feeling like you're putting me down, and I don't like that. I'm going to fight back. The next thing is progress. Now, this is a very child-focused centered areas. The progress is childhood aspirations. I want to feel tribal, from my home life to my school to the schoolyard. I want to feel like I'm a part of a group and I am working together. I am like-minded. We're always looking for that. I've been working with a company recently doing recruiting, and the people that I have been recruiting for them is completely opposite of what the executive wants. And I challenged him. I said, you're trying to hire everybody who reminds you of you, but you said you wanted people that were going to think outside the box. So if you want people to think outside the box, they're not going to be like you. You have to learn to trust that they're not like you. So you see how this is all ties into just these three simple things. Now, I can lose a lot of money, and I can lose a lot of people get mad at me for being so candid with you about emotional intelligence, but it falls down to these things. Now, there's chemicals associated with each one of these. There's oxytocin, which is the source of where we get our empathy. That source comes from trust. It comes from how I trust you. Have you proven I can trust you? And just so you know, women produce oxytocin when they give birth to children, but teenagers have little oxytocin because at age 13, in the Aquarian days, you were considered an adult and you had to go out and hunt for food. You couldn't go to your grocery store and buy it. So you couldn't have this empathy for animals. You had to kill. You had to feel, so you might wonder why your teenagers don't seem to have any empathy or care. It's natural. Okay, so keep that in mind. Then you have serotonin, which regulates and governs the gut, but it's also that where you get that gut feeling. That's that locus of control where you feel like I want some control. And then the progress is where the mirror neurons take place. It's this pathway that helps build that empathy. So you can see there's a physical aspect to it and a mental side to it. So now they're giving you kind of like that little lesson. Let's get to some things that make sense for you guys. Do you guys mind? I mean, I kind of talk a lot, but now that you're here, there's also what we call the mirror. I just talked about the mirror neuron. We mirror what we feel. We mirror what we think we feel, I should say. That's probably the closest truth to it. So I'm going to ask you guys, what are you doing to be intelligent about your own emotions? Here's some things I want you guys to take note of that I am really seeing that a lot of leaders are and are not doing based off of their level of intensity at work and what's going on with the coronavirus. So first, regulate your media intake. I am going to be completely dogmatic about this. I don't even watch I can watch the news one day a week and I get everything in like 15 minutes. You got to be honest with yourself. How much is repeated over and over? We watch one show, the next show is going to say it for those who didn't make the last show. So it's the same thing over and over. So make sure you challenge yourself to say, how much TV do I need to watch? Do I really need to know what's going on, or can I wait till tomorrow? So block it out. Because what happens is your subconscious does not know the difference between something that's real or something that's fake. So if you're watching something and you're seeing it, and you're seeing about all this news, and you start feeling a little negative, it's going to come across. It's going to be picked up by the people you lead, or even by your customers, and they're going to understand it, that you're making them feel a little negative because they mirror you. Build a schedule and stick to it. When I say schedule, I mean treat it as if you have to be somewhere every day, even though you're at home. Get up, get dressed, and then if you don't get up and get dressed, be willing to make that a game for yourself. On Thursdays, I'm bad hair day, and I'm still going to work. That's fine, but make it a schedule and stick to it. Schedule things that offset stress. Like find ways, get up in the middle of the day, take a walk, push-ups, whatever you want to do, watch a Rocky movie, whatever inspires you, just do it. And engage with people. Avoid that loneliness that you want to sink into. Now, that's a hard thing because you're doing visuals, but you'd be surprised how many ways you can do that. We can talk offline about the creative ways to do that and separate work from home, which is an easy one, because if you're working at home and you have your office in your bedroom, you have to understand that your bedroom is no longer your bedroom. So maybe understand how to separate yourself. That means you have to put the divider up, whatever you got to do. Create a visual that separates the two, because if you don't, it's going to seem like you never escape. So I don't want to challenge you guys to tell me anything, but you can easily tell me if you have had these experiences or not. So if you're doing any of these things, is anybody doing things like this? And you can use the chat box if you like. Okay, I don't see anybody's answering there. Okay, I'll just keep moving then. All right, so now I'm going to get into the ways that you guys can help your employees and help yourself. And I said this is going to be pretty tangible. So here's the thing that's going to make emotional intelligence in your everyday life. So let me just give you a quick little snapshot. Make it more social. Here's the thing. In our business, we're very business, and I know that we're focusing on getting people to close loans. You have to make it more social. It's an 80-20 rule now. It literally is 80-20 in reverse. It's 80% social, 20% business. That sounds crazy, right? But it's definitely the way to go now, because what you're seeing is people are actually looking to be more social. So if you ever have a craving for something, it's a craving. If you just take a taste of it, you can say, oh my gosh, this tastes so good. That's how much is happening. That's how much craving is going on for the social interaction. So just make it more social. And this is the best way to do it. If you're talking business, break rank and be like, you know what, forget about business for now. Talk to me about what's going on. How you doing? How's your family doing? Get people to open up about their life, get more social, and then say things like, you know what, let's forget about everything else. Let's just go ahead and talk about this for now. We'll talk about business next time I talk to you. That alone will break rank and make people feel like you're more interested in them than you're interested in the business. Manage your image. This is a very important part, because I've been watching a lot of leaders speak on social media, and you got to be very careful about what's behind you, because a lot of your employees live in apartments, and I see people in their backyards or in their driveways, in their Range Rovers in the parking lot, and they're saying, man, I'm really struggling sitting here by myself. You got to understand the psychology of that. People are looking at that and they're like, yeah, right. Okay. All right. They don't appreciate that, and it becomes a negative for them when they hear you say things like that. So keep this in check. When you manage your image, it doesn't mean you have to be dishonest, but your backdrop is just as important as you, because people are paying attention to the subconscious things behind you that they're picking up, and they're going to judge those, and keep that in mind. Keep your tone right. Get your tone right. This is an important thing. If I'm talking to you right now, I'm very aware of my tone. I know that if I say, look, guys, I'm very serious about this, that is a heightened way. My body language is being expressed in my tone. Now, if you're visually showing yourself, you can use body language, but it should give your tone when you feel excitement. And that goes back when you're asking them about them. If they say something about them that's positive, that's amazing. Congrats. I'm so happy for you. Those are the things you want to do. You want to accent the words that you use, because you know it's going to create something inside them. Use visual cues. I would say, just like I'm using visual cues on here, you can't see me. I'm showing you visual cues because I want you guys to have an image in front of you as I talk about it, and be willing to experiment. This is the big one. We got to step out of rank. This is the best time to try new things as a company. Now, I'm going to tell you, be willing to experiment goes in so many levels. I can spend a whole hour on that. I'm working with several companies right now, and we've seen amazing results by experimenting with new things. One of them is creating new titles for people. I tell you, we have a new employee culture. They're not looking at, the education we used to see as the primary way to excel. They're listening to people like, Tom Bayou, Rob Sharma. They're listening to Simon Sinek. And these guys are known as influencers, disruptors, neurohackers. Putting titles like that in your company gives a visual and empowers them to feel like they have some input, they have some power within the company to make change. So we're doing that right now with a couple of companies, and it's been amazing, because people are like associating themselves with people of these social media gurus who are actually teaching about how the mind works, how the body works. Think about things like that. Do things that are different, and call them those names, and give them tasks that they can do to make sure that they can maybe come up with new ideas and process flows, because we're going to look at new process flows. So keep that in mind. And that is what develops that oxytocin, which is why you see the picture of oxytocin sitting there. It's weird. I'm talking to you guys. I don't even know if you're there, but I'm going to pretend you are. So here, finding examples is key. So I don't know, I'm sure you all have heard of the person named Andrew Carnegie. Well, let me just give you a couple of quick little things about Andrew Carnegie that I love. So Carnegie, he had the steel company. Now, you guys may not know this, but his company prospered during the Depression. He did extremely well during the Depression, and that was in 1892, which was it was really interesting if you look at his tactics. Now, he understood PTSD, or emotional intelligence, if you will. and ways to build positive remote environments. So what he did, I want you guys to understand something really crazy about what he did. He tore down his buildings every 5 years. Every 5 years, he did not move furniture. He demolished the entire building. He took the entire building and put it to the ground. We're talking hammer and chisel, just knock it flat. Build it back up, and then he says, I want you as the employees to build it up. And this is what he understood about human nature. And I want you guys to see this because it's important to understand this is your employees too. He knew that our culture is 70% right brain thinkers. That means on average, 7 out of 10 of your employees are creative people. That means they're dreamers. They have ideas. When they grew up, they wanted to be something. And they had this idea that they were special and they were going to be able to change the world. And he knew that 30% of his people are task driven. Let's just put that in the mortgage industry. So you have salespeople, 70%, underwriters, 30%. No offense to underwriters, but let's put that in perspective. Somebody who's task driven, give me a task, I'll get it done. That's all I need. But the 70% are really the ones that come up with the ideas. The 30% are the ones that take the ideas and push it to production. So he knew that. So he wanted his 70% to be creative. And he put that in perspective. He was able to refine his business every 5 years, and it improved his business substantially. Now, I promise you, you have some right brain thinkers in your company right now that can go in and give you some great ideas. You have to be willing to take the ideas and run with them. And that alone is pushing emotional intelligence 3,000% over the cuff. It will give you the ability to look at ways that you and how you manage your process flow. Who handles the documents, who uploads them, who reviews them, all the kind of things that go on, how many calls we should have, a checklist, all those things that leadership usually comes up with and gives to people that takes away that control, that makes people shut down, is now you have the doorway to open up and give to them. So keep that in mind. It gives you the freedom to do that. Now, it's important. Now, this is part of emotional intelligence. This is a shortcut to it, but I'm telling you, it's been proven that if you do things like that, you empower people to feel like they're entrepreneurs, they're their own business people, and it makes them more willing to work harder and smarter for your company. So I'm gonna ask you guys, if you have a minute, I want you to do me a favor and multitask and work with me just real quick. I do want you to use the chat box real quick because I need to show you something why this is important. I want you guys to tell me, just write a name, who influenced you growing up, or who influenced you in your career, or who influences you now. Just put a name in the chat box. If you don't mind, anybody can do that. Anybody there? Amy, do you see any people chatting there?
I do. Yep. We've got people. Do you see it? You can probably pull it up if you see your chat box, but people are saying, Mom, they're putting specific names in there. My dad growing up, parents, friends.
Okay.
Trisha.
Okay. So now I want you to ask you, thank you so much, you guys, for sharing, because I can't see the chat box for some reason. I might be clicking on the wrong thing, but I'm clicking everything, but I'm not seeing it.
Oh, if you go to your panel
okay, so,
up at the top, Julian, there's like 3 little dots. If you click on that, it'll show you where you have.
Okay, there.
So you can pop it.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. I knew that. Just testing you. All right. So here we go. So here's the thing. Thank you guys, Tom, and I see my dad. Okay, I see a dad. Okay, awesome. Now here's the thing. I want you to consider what you just said to me. I can ask you some other questions that go with that, but I want you to look at what those who answered what they said. They influenced and affected you, right? And they also, I can ask you, who do you influence? How do you affect those you influence? But here's the thing. The people you put in there, were they emotional connections? Were they cognitive, meaning they were very like a Spock-like? Let's put it in perspective. Were they Captain Kirk-like, emotional? Were they Spock-like, cognitive? Or were they technical, like Scotty? I'm just using Star Trek as to give you a visual of what it was. And you will literally see the majority, at least 7 out of 10 people will say the person that they brought up were emotional. That is the key to leadership now. More than anything, everyone is feeling like a child right now. We're needing to feel nurtured, protected, and safe. If you get that in your head and just understand the severity of how to do that, you will see that your teams will be so loyal to you that it would be hard to make them leave. You will have them promoting your company, and companies, other people want to go to too. Now, what you're looking at, what you guys said, for those who shared, thank you very much. You're saying this is what happened. Those people that you brought up are the people that invoked these emotions. This is one of my signature screens where I talk about this. They invoked these kind of things. They made you feel grateful. They made you feel wise. They encouraged you. They made you feel resourceful, patient. They made you laugh. These are things that you infuse in your relationship with your employees right now. More so than business, 80% this, you're going to see a shift even through stress. They're willing to run through the battle with you. I mean, if you read the biography of William Wallace, amazing story, but if you go in depth of William Wallace, it is an amazing story of how he was able to do this with his people. There's so many biographies of great leaders who actually tapped into the emotions of the individuals, even though they had issues to work on. And I'm going to say this out loud. Right now, performance reviews, we need to think twice about those. I've been really pushing with a couple of companies right now about deleting those. Most, I would say, new companies are getting rid of performance reviews, because what you're doing is you're looking for the weak spot and saying, I want you to feel empowered to go work on your weak spot. But if you don't work on it, if you don't do well, you can lose your job. Again, cortisol, stress, but go to perform at your best. That is an oxymoron, especially in our new employee engagement programs that we have out there. So keep that in mind. So now another thing that's been noticed is dopamine is produced when you have these emotions. And look at what it does. Just a few. I can give you 10 pages of what dopamine does to the body. But it improves the immune system and motor skills. It improves concentration and memory. And it's been proven now that low levels of dopamine, people that produce more cortisol and stress, have been associated with Parkinson's disease. Now, Parkinson's disease is on the rise, and also low levels of dopamine increase depression. And depression has increased in this country by 400% before COVID-19. So assume depression is going to go even higher now, and that's going to be a thing that we need to think about too as we try to mask this depression and move forward with production. But I want you guys to imagine what it would feel like if your company was focused on the behaviors that push this kind of emotion every day. How would they perform as a company, as a team? How would they market themselves socially? How would they talk to their friends about the company? Your recruiters would have to be calling people back versus reaching out to people. I want you guys to understand that's how powerful this could be. Now, real quick, there's automatic ways of communicating. You have 9 ways words become emotions. The 2 that are the most important are the automatic and the assuming. I want you guys to keep that in mind. We always are automatic and assuming. You have to learn to literally stop assuming and don't react. So how do you do that? You pause and you replay. You ask for clarity. You ask questions. I'm moving fast because of time. But here are some things that I want you guys to look at. How to apply this, what we just talked about, in everyday life. Here's some tangible things that you can take away today and start working on this week and next week. If you start doing these things, this is going to create the dopamine. This is what's going to create those relationships. Now, if you guys want to chime in, ask me any questions about any of these right now, and I'll tell you why this is important. So do you see anything that stands out to you? Oh, and James, thanks for sharing. You got rid of performance reviews, and this has been great. Thank you for saying that. It's so true. Okay, so anybody see anything here that stands out to them that is important? So I can tell you right now, okay, so I got one, well, third-party resource. That is important now. Let me tell you why. We are now finding that when people follow leaders, by default, we become conspiracy theorists against that leader. So when you as a leader are trying to tell your employees what they could do or shouldn't do, or how they should do things if they're trying to get to where they want to be, you become the parent and they become the teenager, where the parent doesn't know anything, or you don't really know how I feel. And even though your intentions might be well, the best way to get somebody to move forward is third-party validation. Meaning, hey, you know what, let's do this as a team. Let's look at what best practices to deal with angry customers would be. let's go to YouTube. We got a book we can find third-party validation. So it's not you giving information. Use consultants like me. Use people that can come in and teach things that have nothing to do with you. That is the best way to get started. And then I see Alex here. Alex says, okay, communicate. I've not heard from my boss since this thing started. Interesting. You know, here's what's very interesting about that. A lot of us think we've communicated with our peers, our team, because we sent them emails about tasks that they were doing before this all happened. That is not communication. That is task. That is not emotional connection. Reaching out saying, hey, I just want to check on you. I haven't talked to you. I know I've been busy. We've all been kind of crazy. And I was just thinking about you today, going, you know what? I haven't talked to you. That says a lot. If anything, you guys take away this, reach out to people and communicate with them today. And Alex is asking, should I say something? Well, I mean, great point is, you know, there's two types of personalities in this situation. You can either hold it in, or you can reach out to your boss and say, hey, I haven't talked to you. I'd really like to talk to you. How are things going? You could do that. And a lot of employees don't do that because it's the boss, but bosses are human. We're all wearing a tie or have a title doesn't mean you're not human. So reaching out to them is easy to do as well. You can easily do that. But, and that's a great question, Alex. Thanks for asking. But, you know, I would say use third-party resources, book a YouTube club, you know, create things like that. And then Harper's asking, how much is too much communication? In this point, I would say there is no too much communication. If people can, you can leave a message for people and say, hey, look, I want to FaceTime with you. When's a good time? You know, getting a schedule or getting a time where we can do that is important. But there is no such thing as too much communication unless you can basically see it's impeding on performance, meaning getting the work done itself. So I would say get their feedback, you know, say, hey, how much do you want to communicate? I would love to talk to you 3 times a week. Is that okay? But, you know, once a week, I would say, especially leaders, and I'm saying this to executive leaders if you're on the call. If you're an executive leader, having a meeting a week, once a week is imperative. If it's just simple, just want to tell you guys, hey, I just wanted to touch base, say hi, showing my face. I love seeing your faces. I'm so glad we're in this together. And just wanted to make sure anybody want to share anything. I'm put together an inbox where you guys can send me questions, make it anonymous. You know, if you want to just share it, I can share. You can share it publicly. But you want to do stuff like that's going to help. And so thanks for asking that. Now I'm going to give you a couple of things. Here's something I worked on with a company. As you can see, they did this. They created an intranet where they put a bunch of links on where you can literally have people like myself, managers of how the brain works, because people, once they learn how the brain works, which happens to me, when I was depressed and it's successful in the entertainment industry, I was wondering why I wasn't feeling like I was supposed to feel, looking at all the smiles. I wasn't there. And I had to learn about my brain and how my mind worked, and it made it less personal. And I was able to see it from a science perspective. So I really got fascinated with how the brain works. But here's the thing. When people start learning about how the brain works, they take it less personal and they realize that it's not them, it's just human nature, and they're able to address it and direct it properly. At the same time, you see they have things guide to working from home. You see the dog on the desk. They have a webinar for homeschooling. What better way to reach out to the school teachers right now and see if they can talk to your employees, because you have some employees that have kids at home. Maybe they can help with how you can, some tips on, you know, schooling at home. Maybe it might be, you know, it's not taping your kids to the wall. It might be something else. And then a 1-week review, open up and kind of review what we've covered this week, what we've gone through this week. Show recordings that you have, like the Mortgage Collaborative is recording this. Share that with your team. Hey, this is what we learned this week. This is what we got from the Mortgage Collaborative this week, just so you guys can hear the full spectrum of what we're intaking. If you guys have some feedback, have any ideas, you know, share other people's stories. These are things that are going to make people feel connected emotionally to your company. Then, you know, employees healthy is really having a calendar of things that are going on and give them surveys to take. And these are things that are important to have, where you give them a calendar, not too much, but you let them know there's things going on all the time. If you want to break away from the monotony and look at new things, then feel free to chime in. But you want them to lean towards your intranet because they're more associated with you and your brand, and they feel more connected to you as a whole. All right, so, okay, Amy. Now, real quick, I only have a few minutes left, so let me just give you guys this. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Didn't mean to do that. I just went fast. I didn't mean to do that, Amy.
It's okay.
I didn't mean to say. So we go back to that. So what I want to say is here's some real things to keep in mind. So this, again, we're giving you guys this, but this is just be real, keep your employees the center of everything right now. And I know it sounds crazy, but we're focused on process procedures because we've been conditioned ever since the crash and keeping ourselves safe. And I'm gonna say this publicly, and it might make some people mad. HR is complete opposite of this. This is not an HR thing. HR is focused on protecting you, protecting the employee, protecting the company, all three, not in that order per se. But this is about understanding human nature and the drivers that are going to make people perform at their best in times of stress. And this is what's not part of your training, it's not part of our leadership training. We don't talk about this. We just assume, just like an interview. If somebody interviews well, we assume they're able to manage their stress, but we don't understand that this is a thing we have to learn all the time. So here's some things to start thinking about in the future. These are things that are coming up right now in our industry alone. I'm working with several companies right now where these are things that the employees have brought up. These are things they want. I want you guys to start thinking when it comes back to getting to semi-normal, how are we going to operate going forward? How are we going to get people back into the company? So you need to start looking at ways to do that. You know, these are great ideas that came up from other employees that they want. They're getting empowered now. You know, and at the same time, you're going to have to cut fat too. You're going to figure out who should be there and who shouldn't. So you have to really understand who you're going to invest in and who's not. So looking at the behaviors is really important, learning about that as well. This is a company that they're advertising. This is their motto. This is how they market themselves. So I just wanted you guys to see that. So it's really important to understand that it's changing. And so this is what they offer. Okay, so I want you guys, I'm trying to push you guys to think future and think about how that operates. It's thinking about the future. And as you see, the virtual tribes are completely different than the way the mortgage industry is operated. One of the interesting, $2,000 to quit. The companies have found it's cheaper to give you $2,000 to walk away after a week than to have you here for 6 months, barely doing what you're supposed to do, just to find out I got to write you up for 3 visits, then let you go. So keep that in mind. These are companies that understand costs and people. And so I want you guys to have that so you can start looking at that future in business. And this is just a quick little tip on how to work with people when you're talking to people. This is a great little cheat sheet for you that tells you about the things I can't get into because of time. But these are psychological triggers and emotion and physicalities that happen throughout the body. So understanding how to work these in your conversations with people will give you some ideas of how to engage with your employees or even with your peers or even with your customers. So keep that in mind. I use this in sales and it works really well. Now, to leave you guys with just a couple of things, it's up to you. Now, we used to do business, as you see, the Lucille Ball, the assembly line, the chocolate factory. You know, we just did our job, but the culture is shifting drastically. This is changing everything, and it's a positive. You have to believe that because we've survived everything thus far, so we have no choice but to believe we're going to survive again. That's the only way. You can think about the what ifs, or you can focus on the resolve. You focus on that, and don't focus on activities, and then judging people's emotions based off those activities, and then really looking at your identity based off of that. But flip it. You know, identity, get together, it's your leadership team, come together, figure out your identity and the beliefs within that, and you'll see the emotions and activities follow. That is the key to a strong company going forward. And I'm gonna pass that. So with that said, I want to ask you, if you have any questions, you know, I love this quote. I use it every closing because William D. Wallace was in 1903, you leave every person you come in contact with the impression of increase. And I hope I gave you some type of something to walk away with. I hope it gave you something to think about. You know, I love working with people that want to change for the better. And that's what I hope you guys are trying to do by being on this call. I hope you guys take advantage of this opportunity as it is a first-time opportunity for our industry. We are going to bounce back. We will get our money back. We will be able to sell our loans. All those things are going to happen again. But we're shaving the fat right now, and we're going to see things cleaner and better in the long run. So I hope you guys got something from it. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. I know we have short on time, but feel free. I'm looking to see if there's any questions that come up.
Thank you so much, Julian. We'll just wait and see if there are any additional questions. I will say also, if something comes up after the call and you guys have questions, I can certainly forward anything that you email to me. I can forward that to Julian. I'm sure he'd be happy to address anything that comes up after the call. Like I said, it was recorded and I will send it out to everybody who registered along with Julian's PowerPoint here so that you can use that as reference. Also want to just wrap up and remind everybody to go to our TMC Connect webpage. You can view the upcoming discussions for the rest of the week. We have some, I think we have about 7 or 8 more for Wednesday through, or no, there should be about 6 more for the rest of the week, tomorrow through Thursday. And just really want to thank Julian for taking the time today, and all of you who attended. Hopefully this was helpful. I know that we are all experiencing a bit of this as we have moved our workforces to completely being remote. So anyway, it's not lost on us how busy you all are. So do appreciate your time. Hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Julian, thanks again. Look forward to the next session with you, and hope to see and hear from everybody soon. Have a good afternoon.
Well, thank you guys. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
You too, Julian. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.